I had known a girl named Lauren for almost 6 years. We met back in high school and somehow stayed close through everything. College, stress, and growing into different versions of ourselves. By junior year, we even ended up dorming together, which felt normal at the time, like something that was always meant to happen. I trusted her the way you trust someone without thinking twice, the kind of trust that feels automatic and safe. When junior year ended, we moved off campus into a 3-bedroom apartment. The third room belonged to a girl named Megan. We were friendly with her, but not deeply close. Still, everything felt easy. Weekends out together, late nights talking, nothing tense or strange. Spring semester passed quickly, and spring break was coming up. Megan and I planned to leave the same day, while Lauren said she would stay one extra night for a final shift at her job. The morning Megan and I left felt rushed and ordinary. I hugged Lauren goodbye, assuming I would see her the next day back home anyway. I loaded my car and hit the freeway. About 30 minutes and that awful sinking feeling hit me. The kind that makes your chest tighten. I pulled over immediately and tore through my bags, then my backpack. That was when I realized my laptop was still back at the apartment. Turning around felt irritating but necessary. I couldn't go weeks without my computer. The drive back felt longer than it should have. When I unlocked the apartment and stepped inside, I called out for Lauren, expecting her voice back. But the place was quiet. Her bedroom door was wide open, which was odd because she always closed it when she left. I searched my room first, slowly at first, then faster, panic creeping in. When I stepped into Lauren's room, my stomach dropped. My laptop was open on her bed beside her own, already logged in. Confusion turned into something colder, as I realized she knew my password. I wish I had walked out then. But curiosity froze me in place. Looking back now, I understand that moment mattered. And if you're listening on Mr. Rituals, you already know why I say trust your instincts. So make sure you're subscribed. I noticed a folder open on her laptop, and without really deciding to, I looked. Inside were photos of me. Not casual pictures, but images taken when I clearly didn't know anyone was watching. Some were from nights I passed out on the couch after drinking. Others showed me wrapped in a towel either in my bedroom or the bathroom. My hands were shaking as I realized how close she must have been to take them. How often she must have watched me without my knowledge. My heart was pounding so loud it felt like it might echo through the apartment. I closed my laptop and started looking around her room. Drawers first, then the closet. I don't know what I expected to find, but I wasn't prepared for it. Folded among her clothes were things that belonged to me. Shirts, personal items, things I don't even like thinking about now. Items I knew I never gave her. The realization settled slowly and painfully. I gathered everything I could recognize as mine and hugged it to my chest. I didn't confront her. I didn't call her name. I locked my bedroom door out of instinct even though she wasn't there. Then I left the apartment shaking. Once inside my car, I called my parents. My voice kept breaking and they didn't know what to say. There was no advice that could make sense of what I had just discovered. By the time I reached home, I saw that Lauren had blocked me on everything. Social media, messaging apps, probably my number too. I didn't try contacting her again. Part of me was relieved she disappeared. Another part felt hollow and confused. When I returned to the apartment over a week later, all of her things were gone. Her room empty like she had never lived there at all. Almost a year passed before I saw her again. It was outside with mutual friends, and the moment our eyes almost met, she looked away. She never confronted me, never explained herself, and that silence somehow made it worse. It slowly dawned on me that my closest friend for years had been quietly watching me, collecting pieces of my life without my consent, and the memory still makes my stomach twist when I let myself think too long. There was an earlier moment that finally made sense after everything else surfaced. During our first month in that apartment, I had come home drunk one night and fallen asleep quickly. Sometime later, I woke up to a faint sound coming from my closet. I remember sitting up confused, rubbing my eyes, thinking I was still dreaming. The air felt heavy and wrong. Fear rushed through me so fast it felt automatic. I jumped out of bed and ran straight to Megan's room, screaming her name because it was closer than Lauren's. My heart was racing so hard my chest hurt. Megan followed me back with wide eyes and flipped on the light. The closet was empty, nothing out of place. Lauren claimed she slept through everything. At the time, I convinced myself it was just alcohol and imagination mixing together. After what I found months later that night replayed differently in my head. The sounds, the timing, the way Lauren never came out of her room. I started wondering how long she had been watching me before we even moved in together. How many moments I dismissed as coincidence were actually something else entirely. The thought made me nauseous and restless in a way I still can't fully explain. I stopped trusting quiet spaces after that. Closets especially made my skin crawl. Even now I double-check doors before sleeping. I hate that someone I loved and trusted rewired my sense of safety without ever speaking a word. The scariest part isn't what I know she did, it's the gaps, the unanswered questions that will probably stay unanswered forever. Sometimes I still wonder where Lauren went, whether she did this to someone else or learned to hide it better. There was no apology, no explanation, just silence and distance. And that feels worse than anger, because silence leaves room for imagination. And imagination is where fear grows quietly without warning. After that realization settled in, I started replaying every shared memory with her. Conversations that once felt warm, now felt rehearsed. Moments of comfort now felt staged. I noticed how often she watched instead of spoke. How she always remembered what I wore, or where I left things. Back then, I thought it meant she cared. Now I understand attention and obsession can wear the same mask when you are too close to see clearly. Living in that apartment became unbearable. Even with her gone, I felt watched. The silence felt heavy and alert, like the walls remembered her presence. I avoided being alone whenever I could and slept with lights on more nights than I want to admit. Friends said I was overreacting, but fear doesn't respond to logic. It responds to memory. And my memory felt poisoned by what I learned. I tried therapy briefly, but struggled to explain why something unseen still terrified me. How do you describe a threat that already left yet never truly feels gone? The hardest part was accepting that nothing violent happened yet. Everything felt violated. The sense of safety I lost never really came back. It just dulled over time. Like background noise you learn to live with. Even now, certain sounds pull me back. A creak in a closet door. Fabric brushing against shelves. Footsteps that pause too long outside a room. I hate how quickly my mind fills in the blanks. I hate that someone else planted those reactions inside me without my permission. It feels unfair that she moved on while I still carry pieces of what she left behind. I never confronted her, and maybe that's what still unsettles me the most. There was no ending to that chapter. Just a quiet disappearance and years of wondering. Sometimes I catch myself checking reflections or listening too closely at night. Because once you realize someone you trusted was capable of that kind of closeness without consent, it becomes hard to believe you ever truly know who is near you. My old friend Daniel had always been a complicated person. He dealt with insomnia, night terrors, and depression, or at least that was what he shared with me. He was on a lot of medication and often seemed exhausted even during the day. One night he called me completely overwhelmed, saying he had a massive fight with his roommate and needed a place to stay. His voice sounded thin and frantic, so I told him he could crash on my couch for a few nights. When Daniel arrived, he dropped his backpack in the corner of my living room and didn't say much. I tried asking what happened between him and his roommate, but he avoided it, so I let it go. He spent most of the evening watching television and playing Call of Duty on my Xbox. His energy felt off, but not alarming, just heavy and distant. Eventually, I went to bed while he stayed on the couch under a blanket. I woke up in the middle of the night feeling thirsty and realized my water bottle was empty. As I walked past the couch, I noticed Daniel wasn't there. His bag was still in the corner, so I assumed he was in the bathroom. I didn't hear anything, though. No sink, no footsteps. Something about the quiet felt stretched and unnatural, but I brushed it off and returned to my room. Time passed without any sound, and curiosity turned into concern. I was about to get up when I heard a strange clicking noise, like something small tapping repeatedly. I scanned my dark room, and that was when I saw him. Daniel was standing motionless in the corner, arms straight at his sides, his head tilted slightly down. I screamed before I even realized I was doing it, fear reacting faster than thought. He flinched hard when I yelled, and the clicking stopped immediately. I threw a pillow at him and demanded to know what he was doing. He didn't answer. He just turned and walked out stiffly, like his body wasn't fully his own. Seconds later, I heard him collapse back onto the couch. My hands wouldn't stop shaking as I stood there trying to convince myself I had just woken him from some strange dream. The next morning, I brought it up carefully, trying not to sound accusatory. Daniel looked genuinely confused and said he didn't remember leaving the couch at all. He told me he had never sleepwalked before, or at least not that he knew of. The rest of the day passed quietly. We talked like normal friends, and I almost convinced myself it was nothing more than an isolated episode caused by stress and medication mixing badly. That night, I went to bed uneasy but exhausted. Sometime later, I woke up again without knowing why. The apartment felt too still. I checked the living room and the couch was empty again. I called Daniel's name louder this time and searched the kitchen and bathroom. There was no response. His phone didn't light up when I tried texting him, and the silence pressed in on me in a way that made breathing feel deliberate. I was climbing back into bed when I heard muffled sounds coming from my closet. The door was cracked just enough to reveal a shape behind it. As my eyes adjusted, I saw Daniel's face peering through the opening. His hands were clamped over his mouth as if holding something back. I shouted for him to get out, but he didn't move. The stillness felt intentional and wrong. I rushed forward and yanked the closet door open wider, grabbing his arm to pull him out. That was when I saw the knife in his hand, a large kitchen knife clenched loosely like it barely mattered to him. His eyes looked empty and unfocused. Instinct took over and I ran, locking myself in the bathroom with my heart hammering so loud it drowned out every other thought. I stayed there until I heard him shuffle back to the couch and collapse again. I didn't call the police, and I still don't know why. Fear can make logic feel distant. I locked my bedroom door and lay awake until morning, replaying everything over and over, wondering how sleepwalking could ever explain holding a weapon in the dark, and why my gut refused to accept that explanation. At 3 a.m, with no chance of sleep, I messaged Daniel's roommate, my hands shaking as I typed out what had just happened. I asked him directly what their fight was about and whether Daniel had ever done anything like this before. I didn't expect a reply that night, but the fear needed somewhere to go. Sitting alone with it felt unbearable in that moment. When I woke up later that morning, there were several long messages waiting for me. His roommate didn't sugarcoat anything. He said Daniel was dangerous and needed serious help. He explained that the night before Daniel left their place, he had walked into his room holding a knife and stood silently at the foot of his bed. The only reason nothing worse happened was because he tackled Daniel to the floor. Reading that made my stomach drop. Daniel had told me he didn't sleepwalk, or at least didn't know that he did. Hearing that this wasn't the first time he brought a knife into someone's room made everything feel heavier. It was no longer a single strange incident, but a pattern, and patterns are what turn fear into something real and grounded. I confronted Daniel later that day and asked him to leave. I didn't explain everything because I didn't know how. He didn't argue or ask questions. He just packed his things and said he would go to his mother's house. Watching him walk out felt surreal. Like watching a storm quietly move away without knowing if it might circle back. We still follow each other online, but I slowly distanced myself after that. I don't know what to believe about him, whether he truly doesn't remember or if he knows more than he admits. What stays with me is the image of someone standing silently in the dark, holding a knife. Because once you've seen that, sleep never feels quite the same again. After Daniel left, my apartment felt too quiet in a way that didn't feel peaceful. Every shadow seemed sharper, and every sound felt intentional. I kept replaying his stiff posture and the empty look in his eyes, trying to decide which possibility scared me more, that he was truly asleep, or that some part of him knew exactly what he was doing. Neither answer gave me any comfort. I started locking my bedroom door every night, even though I lived alone again. Habits form quickly when fear teaches them. I checked closets before bed and avoided sleeping on my back. Small changes that felt necessary at the time. I didn't tell many people what happened because saying it out loud made it feel heavier and more real than I was ready to handle. Occasionally, Daniel would post online like nothing had happened. Smiling photos, casual captions. It made my skin crawl seeing how normal he appeared. I wondered if anyone else around him sensed something was off, or if I was the only one who saw behind that mask. Sometimes I questioned my own memory and wondered if fear had exaggerated it all. But then, I would remember the weight of that moment. The way my body reacted before my mind could catch up. Fear like that doesn't come from imagination alone. It comes from something deeply wrong registering all at once. And no amount of time passing has fully erased that feeling from my chest. I don't know where Daniel is now or whether he ever got help. Part of me hopes he did, and another part hopes I never cross his path again. Some nights I still wake up for no clear reason and listen closely to the silence. Because once you learn how thin the line is between safety and danger, it never quite disappears from your thoughts. I don't have many close friends, and for a long time I thought a guy named Eric was the closest thing I had to a best friend. We met in one of my college classes and bonded over dumb things like cheating on tests and helping each other hunt down homework answers. It wasn't deep at first, but over time we started hanging out more, and I slowly let my guard down in ways I usually don't. I told Eric personal things I didn't share with most people. Not because I thought he was especially trustworthy, but because he was there and listened. Looking back, I realized comfort doesn't always mean safety. He was someone I felt familiar with rather than genuinely close to. And at the time, I didn't think that difference mattered as much as it really did. One night when I had no plans, I messaged him and he suggested we go to a bar in town. I drove because I wasn't planning on drinking much, but Eric did the opposite. Shot after shot, mixed drink after mixed drink. He got sloppy fast, approaching random girls and saying things that made my skin crawl. I kept apologizing for him and feeling embarrassed just standing there. The night felt tense and uncomfortable, so I dragged him out to my car and drove him back to his apartment. I had never been inside before. I walked him in and laid him on the couch where he passed out instantly. His phone slipped from his hand onto the floor, but he didn't react at all. It was obvious he was completely gone. I stood there for a moment debating what to do before picking up his phone. It was unlocked and I don't know what I expected to find. Curiosity mixed with a quiet sense that something about him was off. I scrolled through his camera roll, at first seeing nothing but junk. Then I tapped into an album that would change how I saw him forever. The album was labeled Girls, and at first I assumed it would be the usual junk people hide, something tasteless but expected. Instead, my stomach dropped as I scrolled. The photos showed young women tied to a bed, their faces tense and clearly distressed. Some were crying, some looked frozen in fear. Nothing about them felt staged or playful. My mind tried to reject what my eyes were seeing. I told myself they had to be pulled from the internet, that there was no way this was real. But something small caught my attention. The bedspread in the photos was a distinct blue pattern. I felt cold all over as I walked down the short hallway and turned on the light in his bedroom. The same blue bed cover sat there perfectly still, waiting. I didn't know what to feel. Anger, fear, confusion all blurred together. My hands moved on their own as I sent 2 of the photos to myself, then deleted the messages from his phone. I set it back on the floor where it had fallen and left his apartment without making a sound. The air outside felt heavier than it should have, and I couldn't stop shaking. The next day, Eric texted me saying he knew I went into his room and that we needed to talk immediately. He followed it with another message claiming the pictures were just role-playing. I didn't respond. What scared me more was how he knew I had seen them at all. How he knew I had stepped into that room while he was unconscious on the couch. That night, he showed up at my place and rang my doorbell over and over until it felt aggressive. I ignored it, hoping he would leave. Hours later, rocks hit my window and I heard his voice outside calling my name. Then I heard him trying to open one of my windows. That was when fear finally pushed me to act, and I grabbed my phone. I called Eric and yelled at him to leave immediately. My voice sounded strange even to me, sharp and desperate. I told him if he didn't walk away right, then I would call the police. There was a long pause on the line where he didn't speak at all. Then he hung up. The silence afterward felt louder than the shouting had been. He never texted or called again after that night. But the quiet didn't feel like relief. It felt like being left alone with a question that refused to settle. I double-checked every lock before bed and kept lights on longer than usual. My mind kept replaying how calmly he had shown up, like he believed he still had access to my space. I still have the 2 photos saved on my phone, and I don't know why I haven't deleted them. Part of me feels like they're proof, and part of me feels sick knowing they exist at all. I've thought about going to the police, but the uncertainty holds me back. I don't know who those women were or what they went through. Sometimes I wonder if Eric moved away, or if he's still nearby living like nothing happened. The thought that he might be doing the same things with someone else makes my chest tighten. I don't know if he knows where I go now, or if he still watches quietly from a distance. That unknown feels heavier than anything he ever said. I wish I could say that fear fades cleanly with time, but it doesn't. It just changes shape. Certain noises outside my window still make my heart race, and unfamiliar footsteps make me pause. Once you realize how well you can misjudge someone you thought you knew, trust becomes something fragile and easily cracked. I've replayed that night more times than I can count, wondering if I should have handled it differently or acted sooner. Fear has a way of slowing your thoughts while speeding up your body. I still remember how my hands felt gripping my phone, and how my room didn't feel like mine anymore. like a line had been crossed that couldn't be uncrossed. I stopped going to familiar places for a while and changed routines without really thinking about it. Different routes, different hours, fewer conversations. It felt instinctive, like my body was making choices before my mind caught up. I never told many people the full story because saying it out loud made it feel too real and too close. Sometimes I scroll past his name online and feel a brief jolt of panic, even though nothing follows. It's strange how fear can live quietly until it's reminded of its source. I don't know if he remembers that night the same way I do, or if he believes his own excuses. That uncertainty lingers longer than anger ever could. I still think about the women in those photos and wonder if anyone ever noticed something was wrong. If they felt that same sense of being trapped in a situation that shifted too fast. It scares me how easily normal can turn into dangerous when you trust someone just enough to let your guard down. Even now I hesitate before closing my eyes at night and listen carefully to the sounds around me. Some fears don't announce when they leave because they never really do. They just wait quietly for the next moment of silence. And I don't think I'll ever be completely sure that the danger is truly gone.